Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, joined by maybe first-time guest to the show, Tony East, but a familiar face nonetheless. You all know him. And Tony, the peace sign is kind of worthless because I don't actually have a video podcast. This is all audio. So you could have been in the bathroom, you could have been outside, you could have been naked for all I care. I do glad, as I'm watching this, you have clothes on. But nevertheless, thanks for joining the show.
I was trying to say second time, not the peace sign. I was here when we talked
Oh,
about we talked about Miles Turner last year. Remember when he
this is
departed
true. I tried
so
to burn it out of my
graciously?
memory because of how crazy that was. But now we're back again with more controversy. I feel like I would let some of that simmer down before I hop back into the Ethernet and share my thoughts on all things Fever. But in all seriousness, I didn't expect early on, Tony, to be seeing you, or really not seeing you, because I figured I would see you a lot at these Fever games, but writing as much. It almost feels like me, you, Chloe. I'm like, boy, although I'm not traveling, I almost feel like I'm a full time beat writer right now for the Fever with the amount of volume and just newsworthy things we've had to cover throughout the season so far. So, for those who are tuning in and will inevitably read this headline on the podcast, I'll start with us being a week removed from the injury report saga. That was quite the last few days on the Fever beat. I won't lie to you, but what was well, let me back up. I'll ask you, now that we're a week out of it, what are some of your takeaways from just how the whole situation was handled as we head into another week? And funny enough, later today, another injury report.
Yeah, it was a new one for sure. Not a new one. I've seen players be late scratches before, just in that, the show I showed up and found out the second I sat down that it was happening. And it was such a weird thing to me because after it was all explained, like I could understand how every step of the way, the person who made whatever decision they had to make to not put somebody on the report, to not play, to not have somebody practice, like all of it makes sense. Like I'm not saying anybody had like some colossal failure at any given step of the process, but at the end of the day, it's like this all could have been the most normal thing ever if she was just listed as questionable or probable Wednesday morning at any time of the day. And that not happening led to all this being like this. And because if you like actually break down every step one at a time, they all feel very normal. I think that's why it's so frustrating to Caitlin and the Fever, because we've heard her talk in the presser. We heard Stephanie White say that she thought they shouldn't have had the warning come their way because they said it. They don't think they've done anything wrong, and I get that if I break it down individually, but that absence of information between whatever her wake up time that she said was and her breakfast and her official decision to not play, that is where there is the breakdown was and made it such a thing that we're still talking about it a week later.
So now I'm going to hit you with all the hard hitting questions because that's what
Okay.
I do in this business. That's my reputation around here. So when Caitlin Clark responds to you after you ask, hey, can you explain your perspective on what happened with the injury report, your back, and she gives you the breakfast order, did your stomach growl like mine did? Because I'll give Caitlin credit. She has this sarcastic kind of dry humor about her that I've noticed over the last 3+ years since covering her on a day-to-day basis. But Tony, what'd you think of? Well, I'll give you my take first. I actually didn't mind the emotion and kind of the anger that she had
Same.
for how the situation unfolded. I don't know if Caitlin really understands the full scope of what the injury report means and what the rules are. So for those listening who might still be a little confused when it comes to WNBA rules, if there is an inkling or reason for a player possibly not playing the day before a game, injury report comes out at 5 p.m. the day before a game. So if there's any point leading up, let's say today is Wednesday, any point Caitlin or another player feels an injury or feels some pain or some discomfort, any part of their body, and they get something checked on, in theory, that would land you on the injury report. That does not mean that at 5 p.m. today you would be ruled out, but it would it would give notice to general public and businesses, betting partners, and such like that to understand, okay, there's a possibility this player might not play. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad rule. I think that's a great rule to have in place, considering all the factors involved with not only the WNBA but every other league when it comes to sports betting, when it comes to people spending hard-earned money to come to see you play. If there's a chance you might not, I would like to know that as a consumer. And then on the day of the game, it's so particular and so consistent that it's hard for me to say that the Fever did not know that they should have spoken up sooner. Because on the day of the game, you give an injury update every 15 minutes, literally. So I could check it right now and just see for myself, okay, has anything changed from, I'm filming this at 11 o'clock, basically, from 11 to 11:15. You can check it that frequently throughout the day. So the Fever did none of that last week, and it led to a lot of speculation over Caitlin's back and, what happened, why she wasn't listed. And I think she kind of just went full bore there, Tony, in the pregame press conference, kind of let her side of the story out there, which I didn't mind. I'll never mind emotion from the players, but I almost felt like, Tony, she was explaining or over-explaining herself because the team and the organization failed to uphold their end of the bargain and just put her on the injury report. And even if she is like, hey, I'm good, I'm whatever, just do it. And you'd rather be overly precautious with that than to just simply ignore it because, in my opinion, Tony, it came off, or the effect of it all really looked bad on the team and the league from, again, a betting standpoint. I don't love sport betting, and fun fact here, I can't even bet on the leagues that I cover, which is a good thing.
Yeah, we're not allowed to.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm just saying that, and I know people rolling their eyes probably, but a lot of money is involved with these leagues and the betting. So I'm not saying I care that Joe Smith lost his money, but the point is, if you got in bed with these companies, if you partner with them, if you've done that to bring in all this revenue, you have to honor that commitment to them as well. And then on top of that, in my opinion, the biggest reason I care about it is because of the fans. People want to see Caitlin Clark play basketball, just like Wembanyama, just like LeBron James, just like Tiger Woods in his heyday. You want to be able to know if there's a chance that star figure is going to be in or out, and then make your decision based off that information, not assuming she's going to play, and then 10 minutes before the doors open, she's not going to play. So what was your reaction to some of the emotions she showed, Tony? And really just your overall thoughts on Caitlin being, I thought, as forceful as she's probably ever been in front of the media.
Yeah, I love that too. Even though I'm the one asking the questions, people are like, "Oh, is she mad at you?" Like, dude, even if I don't think it's that the case. Even if she is, dude, I'd rather people be mad at me and be very honest and emotional than
there you go.
The exact opposite. But to be clear, I do not think that was.
Well, I think she hates you personally, but that's just me. Better for me, better for me. The competition, but
I have a very hypocritical actual answer, which is going to sound funny to say, because if I'm wrong, what I'm about to say is going to sound ridiculous because I'm about to literally speak for her. But to me, her frustration is exactly that. It feels like she was out and everybody spoke for her. Like all these fans thought it was for this reason. All these other people thought it was for this reason. There's reporting that it's for this reason. And then, someone else is describing her day. Someone else via the injury report is describing her day a different way. Like, everybody but Caitlin Clark is telling you what they think happened on Wednesday. The only person who's not telling you what happened to Caitlin Clark on Wednesday is her, right? So that is so frustrating if you're anyone. And I'm not, she's never said this. So I'm currently projecting and speaking for her in some way. But in some ways, the fact that she really over-explained her day does kind of speak to that she was like, you don't know what happens to me during the day. You don't know why all the decisions were made. And we don't, right? That's why I'm glad she really went through the whole day to show exactly what I was kind of saying earlier. It's like, we don't know the whole day. Like not being on the 5 p.m. the day before when we didn't see her do a lot of practice. She wasn't the only player standing off to the side. Like Stephanie White said, they expected her to play. And she said she woke up the next day with the back pain. So I get why she wasn't on the day before. That day is where it gets confusing, the actual day of the game. And you go back to literally their game before it. They played Seattle, and Aaliyah Boston was the day before, questionable meniscus. And they ruled her out at whatever that was, 5-ish. And I walked down to the court right then, and there she was sitting in street clothes, and they ruled her out right then. Like, that is like what you expect the process to be.
It all made sense, right?
Yes. And the 15-minute thing is true. There's a new one that comes out of 15 minutes. There's not an expectation that teams will literally go in and like change you from questionable to probable to
right.
question, like every 15 minutes. But like the reason it's that is so that there is lots of random increments when new information comes in to change it and update it when applicable.
Exactly.
And so that is, as she's explaining why she's so frustrated, or as she is being frustrated, I guess, not explaining why she's frustrated. That is the only part that still was lost to me, is she woke up and said there was pain, and she tried to play, which to me, as Stephanie White said, why they didn't put her on there. They thought she was going to, and then for her confidence reasons, she didn't think it was a good idea to play. So I think she has never said this, so I'm currently doing what I am saying that she's frustrated about. So
Caitlin Clark, if you're listening, watch that Tony East fella.
This is so rich, because if this is not true, like if she's frustrated because of us, because of the process, like that would also make sense to me. But I think it's that just people are constantly speaking for her and guessing at motives that are just totally not real. When, like, again, like I said, every step of the way, you can look at any one individual person and totally understand why they did what they did. Nothing was totally weird or atypical outside of the no listing for the morning part. So, and then she doesn't go on the injury report. She's not the decider of that.
Yeah, I don't think that if you ask Caitlin Clark to pull out her phone and find the WNBA injury report, that she has a bookmark like the rest of us. I don't think that's a real thing for CC. But to put a button on this, my general thoughts after Caitlin was that Stephanie White's reaction to me asking, one, do you think you're going to get fined? No, I would say the same thing in her shoes. I would never say, oh yeah, my team definitely deserves to be punished for this. But the follow-up after they got the warning and she was still saying, we did nothing wrong, I vehemently disagree. And I think I'm going harder on this than you are, Tony, because I would even argue if she didn't practice that Tuesday before the Wednesday game and she got maintenance on her back, that needs to be listed, because that doesn't sound like rest. I know that's kind of like an excuse that Stephanie White tried to use, but maintenance on your back, trying to get treatment on your back is how they phrased it. That sounds to me like an injury. And again, there's a gray area there where you all just weren't forthcoming enough. So funny enough, we can argue about.
But this is like a bigger picture thing generally to me, because like we know for a fact Aaliyah Boston was on a minutes restriction the first couple games, right? She wasn't on the injury report until they played Seattle.
Oh,
and
that's
Lexi
fair.
Hall
Okay,
was on a minutes restriction for her hamstring early in the season. Same thing, was not on the report. Like we knew that, but they were playing. You know what I mean? That's where I think there's a distinction between the injury report.
Okay,
and
that's fair.
Getting treatment on a body. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, because she's playing and you play enough games, everybody's getting treatment. So that makes sense.
If they expect her to play and they're doing treatment, but maybe they're not going to play her the whole time, or they're going to take her out to do the alignment in the back like they did on opening night. Like I understand how that could, even if I agree with you, like not practicing and having whatever, but like I get how they could say they expected her to play the whole time, even with all those inputs.
I can concede some ground there, but I think when I fast forward to getting her reaction that Friday, it was funny because we were all waiting that Thursday. Then, okay, well, if you didn't do anything wrong, this is Stephanie White saying this on Friday. That Thursday, guess who's on the injury report is probable? Caitlin Clark. So that's why I'm like,
because we all said that was the solution. That was it.
That you could do that from the beginning. So with her saying that, I had to kind of chuckle internally, because it's like, well, you may feel that way, but the powers that be basically said, try us again. And you all said, you know what? We probably won't do that. We'll do things differently. Even though we did all these things right, you did not, which is why you got the warning from the league and why you potentially could have gotten in more trouble if you didn't list her as probable. Now, we'll see what that means going forward. You know, Caitlin, I don't really know if it was a joke, Tony, but she kind of stated like, you know what, maybe I do need to be listed as sore on the injury report going forward, which could mean probable or questionable or whatever. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. I did laugh at some of the interactions I had with Stephanie White and some of the fan reaction to it. I promise you, it's never as tense, in my opinion, as it seems. Like you just mentioned, Caitlin doesn't hate you. Stephanie White doesn't hate me. I certainly don't hate her.
Maybe they do.
You know, but if she hates me, that's fine. I've had it happen in the past.
No, I agree.
But no, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I look at it as sparring. You know, been in a little while since you get in the ring, and if we're both doing our jobs at a high level, I would expect it to be some friction between the coach and the reporter, and the coach and the player, or coach and reporter, player and reporter, because ultimately we both want to get our jobs done, and all of us want to do our jobs at a high level, and our priorities don't align like you think they would because we're working in the same league. I don't work for the Fever. If I did, I wouldn't ask any of the questions I was asking last week. So to wrap this up, I will say the only other question I had, which I got a chance to ask Caitlin yesterday, Tony, was like, when did these back stuff kind of pop up? And
Yep.
she mentioned that it was something that she's kind of dealt with for the last year or so as she's learned her body more. And it makes you wonder, like, how much stuff did you just play through that we never really recognized? And so from that perspective, Tony, what's your take on Caitlin just being more in tune with her body? And by in tune, I mean just listening to the pain sometimes, because she mentioned that she probably pushed through too much of it last year, rushing to come back, and it probably did her more damage in the long run than in the short term had she just sat out and maybe taken a few more games, because she was kind of like a Leah Boston there for a second, where she had the Iron Woman streak going of never missing a game, and then last year was the first year she ever really was injured in her life.
Yeah, the optics of that Wednesday game is why it's still being discussed. But like, if we zoom out and look at it from the prism of what you just asked me, I mean, this is like what you want in theory. If you're a fan of,
She's been balling. Like, we glossed over the Friday game, like, oh yeah, she
was balling.
Didn't practice, came back, didn't play, and like, looked amazing there in that third quarter to help them beat a very good Valkyries team.
Right. And in theory, if you go through a year where, okay, your Iron Woman streak ends, you have a groin injury, you have an ankle injury, and you realize, and your team realizes, okay, we got to change something. Like this, this was not the right way that the injuries got managed and things like that, whatever. Maybe they didn't think there was anything wrong, but they wanted to do something better. How about that? To be more clear. This is what you'd want that to look like. You'd listen to your body before a game and go, oh, I shouldn't play. Like, this is a bad idea for my long-term health, because if you miss this game, but you can then play in more, or your risk of back injury goes down, whatever it may be, like, that's good. That should be the proper response to learning about your body as it grows into the pros and the league is more physical and there's, 44 games and you're traveling all the time, things like that. Like, that should be the right response to it, especially when you have identified this is a thing that's been an issue for more than just the last couple weeks. And that was another understated, I think, part of that Fire game is like, we saw her leave the game for the back stuff on opening night. Like that happened, right? So we know it wasn't just like yes, I think she woke up with whatever she was calling it, an issue on Wednesday morning, but like, it wasn't like that was a surprise injury. Like that had happened, or that the back had been bothering her throughout the season at other times, clearly. So managing it is smart in that way. After she learned more about her body last year, that should be the response as an athlete and as a team, even if it does suck for a day, especially optics wise. And you wonder with back stuff, like a lot of athletes that just are always dealing with it, like in any sport for maybe their whole lives professionally. I'm not saying Caitlin has or ever will beyond a certain amount of time, but like they can linger, and that's another reason you want to be cautious with them or find the best plan to handle them if you can.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 Show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Yeah, and she did mention that there probably will come a time where she has to push through more pain than she would now. But yes, as you pointed out, there are 6 games into the season. She's played 5 of them. There's no reason to really go full bore right now. There's no reason to push the gas all to the floor. I mean, still in my Indy 500 phase, if you can't tell, and just go for it. There's no point in risking that, and I think we're all on board there. But quietly, as we've kind of mentioned, Tony, that drove all the national headlines. And I mean, that's Caitlin. Whatever she says will, for better or worse, go viral, go everywhere. But I have also been impressed with some of the strides they've made defensively.
Yes.
And overall as a team. Because if you look at some of these rankings as of late, I mean, they're 4th in offensive rating, 4th in defensive rating, 2nd in net rating. And they're leading the league in scoring. I think they're 3rd or 4th in assists per game. So there is a lot of good things to kind of like about this team and this new version of it. So, from the purely basketball standpoint, Tony, what have you liked and maybe disliked about this version of the Fever as we get further into the season? Now, I get it, small sample size, but I do think we're starting to see a little bit more of some trends here or there that I can kind of get with. Obviously, I think Caitlin, even with the early shooting slump, the whole back saga, whatever, she's been pretty good. She's been great, honestly. If we had to vote for first team All WNBA right now, she'd be on there. And then I think Kelsey probably can be a little bit better, offensively, but she's been Kelsey. Aaliyah missed the game, but thought she was very dominant in that Valkyries game. But beyond that, what are your thoughts just team-wise?
Last 2 games, Aaliyah has been sensationally good again.
Oof,
and
yes.
That's like, I mean, she was their best, or she was, her and Kelsey were carrying the team for the last 2 months of last season, and they made it very far, right? So they know what this group is capable of with only 2 of their stars. So getting all 3 to hum at the same time is going to be what their goal is. And you've been seeing more of that recently, where Caitlin looks awesome against Golden State, and so does Aaliyah, and Kelsey Mitchell is like the best fill-in third option, take 11 free throws to score 19 points player like possible that there is. It's really, it has been a weird time to actually evaluate what they're doing, because they look good. They're 4-2, and both of their losses are by 1 possession that they had a shot at the buzzer to win or tie the game or whatever. Granted, their defense was truly awful in that Dallas game and pretty bad, especially in overtime in that Washington game that they lost. And that is where you wonder what about their ceiling so far. I think we're about to learn a lot about it when they go on this next stretch of games where they're playing a lot more good teams. But you see the tinkering that they're doing to try to figure out. Stephanie White has said this rotationally, like the right balance of offense and defense combos with the bench players that they have. Like recently, you've seen no Damiris Dantas at all. That's part of their shift there. You're seeing more small ball for better or for worse. You're seeing Billings play more backup 5. The way that she's shifting that around to figure that out has kind of come to be recently, and I think that will help them a lot, because they've had 3 games where they've missed a starter this year, half of their games. Like, it's really hard to tangibly assess like what's actually real and not for this team, or what decisions they're going to make lineup wise all the time. But I do think of late, she's like, White's been willing to go to small ball more, and they're finding the best combos with which stars should be on the floor when and with which reserves. And okay, Raven's doing a lot more. She should be punchier here. Okay, Michaela Timpson's a little more consistent early in games. Okay, she should play here. All that stuff I think is going to help them eventually when a rotation settles in, and they'll have good and bad moments. But right now, I think you're seeing them figure out, and they look to me close to the team that everybody kind of thought they could be. I believe they're first in pace. It changes so much in these early games. Yeah, they're still first in pace. They look like structurally the team that people thought that could be there, of really fast, gets enough stops to play fast. And of course, if you have Boston, Clark, and Mitchell, you should be at any moment the best offense in the league, and your floor is at worst like 5th, and they're 4th right now. So look, it looks about what I thought, albeit with some clunkier defense.
Do you think the bigs have come along as you envisioned? Because I probably downplayed the changes in the front court, and I'm seeing some signs. I think Maisha Hines-Allen has played better as of late. I think Mo Billings has kind of like pick and chose her spots a little bit better. But even then, I do think that has become kind of a focal point for the fan base to be like, wait a second, do we have enough reinforcements behind Aaliyah to make sure that we're good? Because clearly she's not going to play 40 minutes every game. I mean, in the playoffs, you might. Aaliyah, get the hydration going. We're trying to win. But my point is, do you think those players, those veterans, have kind of unfolded or been plugged in as you maybe theorized?
No. I mean, the answer is no. So, I mean, before the season, I thought that, especially compared to the fan base, that their backup front court would be enough. And they've, like, most of Timpson's games, her most recent game was not this way, but most of Timpson's games have been one half where she looks lost a little bit, and White takes her out, and you can see them talk in front of the bench, and they're, figuring something out. And then she plays more or better in the second half. But, that when she can't go and Dantas is barely playing, she hasn't been mobile enough on defense. Her shot's been certainly up and down. Then they have 3 bigs who can play, and they're really reliant on that to be a trio. And like against Seattle, the game that was it Seattle or the game before that? Who did they play before Seattle? Washington.
Washington.
Like that game, yeah. Like Hines-Allen was about to not play in the first half until Boston was like, Boston got hurt and left in the third quarter, but like Hines Allen played 2 minutes in the first half of that game. So that speaks to one, I think White figuring out her rotations and all that, and that's part of it. But you've heard her say it twice that she prefers to be bigger and rebound and have front court presence on the floor, and yet she still is going to small ball a lot because it's very clear that has been more effective than her preferred groups, and that's fine. Like, play the best lineups. It's good that you're being reflexive and things like that, but I think if the bigs were living up to the hope that they had, they would be playing them more than the small ball groups that they've turned to. Billings played 11 minutes in their last game against Golden State. That's her former team. Like, she knows that team better than anyone on the roster, you would think. So I'm going to be curious how much that becomes a trend. If they keep going to that Hall-Cunningham big man combo, or if they can find a way to squeeze more out of the reserve bigs. Because I agree, Hines Allen looks better recently, and it's very clear what her strengths and weaknesses are. Billings, I think, is a good starting four, but her best role so far has been backup five, like when she's out there without Boston. And so then how do you get actual real minutes for Timpson that make sense? She can't play the four. And so it is a balance to still strike and learn. But yeah, I thought that they had certainly enough there. And I still think they have enough players to fill the rotation on given nights, especially if they can go small. But I don't know if one individual has like every single game they've played so far, one or more of their reserve bigs have not lived up to the level that they need to be at. And I think that is something that they need to figure out.
Yeah, I guess if you're looking at it from a glass half full standpoint, it's like, man, if they can ever click, how scary can this team be? And one player who I've kind of laughed at, and not in like a mean way, but just in a, wow, she's really a rookie and she's going through all the rookie stages, is Raven Johnson, to kind of pivot to the backcourt. And you start laughing right there. See, I mean, like, she's one of those players. She reminds me, and she kind of gives me the energy of those players who you can't really be mad at because they play so hard. Like, I make the joke, and she's not Thomas Bryant, clearly, but like Thomas Bryant was probably my favorite pacer of all time. I say that jokingly and lovingly because he played so hard that even when he made mistakes, you could kind of forgive him because you're like, man, this guy's giving his whole heart out there. And that's how Raven is. I remember there was a sequence in the Valkyries game, I believe, Tony, where she might have made a shot. I think she made a shot actually on the baseline, and then she immediately fouled like 90 feet from the basket. And
in the bonus,
you could see Stephanie White just lose it in the moment. We're all just cracking up. But then, Aaliyah pulls her to the side, talks her up, coaches her up, and she makes some big plays, I thought, in that game to help them continue to maintain control against the Valkyries team that's very good in their, second year of existence. So when I look at Raven, Tony, I see the defensive stuff already. I mean, that was a given. The long arms, even some of the rotational help that she has. I mean, she's a killer on the ball. But I've even been impressed with some of like the weak side blocks she's been getting and her deflections and stuff like that have disrupted other teams' offenses. But offensively, I've seen a little bit of the light bulb kind of go off because early on, I thought in the preseason she looked great early, but then you start playing, no disrespect, real WNBA teams, real WNBA caliber players, real schemes, and they account for all your tendencies and habits, and she was struggling. But I think over the last 2 or so games, she's turned a corner where she's looking like, okay, this is the player that we can throw out there and give Caitlin a breather, give Kelsey a breather, and she'll hold the line. And if not, take a little bit more of it back because of how great she is defensively and also, not being so sped up offensively. So I know you're working on a big piece for her. I will not step on that piece at all. I don't want to, get too into the weeds. But, Tony, when you're analyzing Ravens game, what stands out to you about their first round pick this year?
Yeah, you are seeing, I think, why they put her on the floor a lot more recently. Like, Ty Harris has been fine, adequate, I would say, but Raven is just so much more dynamic and has like more big play potential really on both ends. She can get to the cup and pass, which she did a good job of in their last game. 2 tidy in the lane passes, finished 2 shots, 3 shots, whatever, around the basket. And of course has like major defensive disruption stuff. And Ty Harris is like a stable defender and is a caretaker and all that, but like the offensive pop isn't the same. And so that is, I think, the rookie path that Johnson has been on, is going straight from college to the pros in the W. Like, you're fresh as a daisy when you get to the pros. You've been playing, you're in shape, you're ready to go. And so she just looks so mobile and fast and everywhere on the defensive end in a way that gives them a nice look when they go to the second unit. And so at first she played in the opener, and then she was like, not particularly great in LA. And so her minutes kind of drop. And now Stephanie White's like, okay, you got to play. Like, you're impactful. You're helping us get out there. And so sometimes she's out there for defense. Sometimes she's playing 22 minutes and she's wide open and she's shooting a lot. But that's the next step, certainly, is figuring out what to do with space. We've seen her evolve from 3 for 12 and missing, I can't remember, a lot of threes against Portland to being much more controlled with those decisions in the very next game. Like, that's the growth you hope you see from game to game from a young player, and she'll have some bad nights and regress at times. But yeah, to me, she's figuring out the pros pretty quick, and I think what makes it possible for her is she's like got a personality that people want to work with and want to be around and help her play. And I think that, like when I was talking to her, it also helps that the coach that she's working with the most closely, Bree January, they're not the same player in terms of like exactly what they do, but if you just characterize their strengths as a player, they are very similar in that way. Bree January was a nasty defender, good offensive player, all-star several times, and Bree January is now working with Raven quite a bit. And so you're seeing her learn from a vet who has, the general outline of a similar player. She's got a bunch of familiar Gamecocks on the team. Her personality is infectious. All of a sudden, everybody's like, yeah, we want you to succeed. We're going to do everything we can to help you. And that you see that in games, you see that in practices, and you see how she is taking it all in stride. So we'll see what this actually amounts to. Her jumper is going to be obviously a massive swing skill. For her, she's 2 for 11 on threes so far. But basically everything else has been pretty solid for a rookie, and she's connected with everybody, and that's kind of exactly what you hope happens for a 10th pick, is that, oh wow, they actually can play in year one. That's great news for the Fever.
Yeah, you can tell that the chemistry is there, even between her and Caitlin. They've had their little like dances I've seen.
We talked about that
after certain moments, and between coach and player, a couple weeks ago, maybe about 10 days ago, we had Raven complimenting Stephanie White's significant other, Lisa Salters, saying she has great taste. So, we just got all types of good vibes going between the rookie and the rest of the crew. That was one of the funniest moments I've ever had in a press conference or a press setting with Raven, who is the unfiltered rookie. She's accidentally giving away play calls, in the post-game pressers after her preseason debut. But nevertheless, she has looked like someone that can be used. And you never know, as we've seen, how much that depth will matter, because last year they didn't really have that. And that kind of led to the overuse of Kelsey Mitchell. So selfishly, stay tuned. I know I plugged Tony's story, but stay tuned. I got something I'm working on Kelsey Mitchell, just the mainstay, the holdover kind of from the old guard. And when me and Tony, or really Tony by himself often, would go to a Fever practice and it'd be just him and the players. And that's pretty much it. And now things have changed a lot, Tony, since then. There's a lot of cameras, a lot of attention on the Fever team, deservedly so, because they proved a lot. I thought last year, especially coaching-wise, being able to toggle with your lineup and still make it to the brink of the WNBA Finals without your best player, that's very impressive. But then now that just raises the stakes for this season to understand, okay, this is what we got. This is where we're at. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but there's no guarantee that Aaliyah, Kelsey, and Caitlin will be here for the next 3-4 years. This could all change next year, possibly, or the year after. So my point is, I think everyone,
very likely, almost certain.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But my point is, when it comes to Kelsey, she has an opportunity to kind of choose her own path here very soon. And again, I'm not painting that I'm not going to report or say she's wants out, she's leaving. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, depending on how the season goes, Kelsey, who can no longer be court, I believe, can now, and for those listening, that means franchise tag. Since that can't happen anymore, depending on how the season goes, she's going to have plenty of suitors come free agency, and she has to rethink, where does she want to go in her career? Does she want to stay here? Does she want to go elsewhere? What will this season mean for that? Now, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, only game 6, but just some things to think about as the season goes on. So, Tony, the last thing I'll ask you before we get out of here real quick is, how much do you think these next stretch of games will allow us to find out even more about the Fever? Because if I'm looking at the schedule, next 4 games, Portland, I'll say it's probably a gimme. Their expansion team, not very good. But
they're 4-3.
I hear you. But you got Golden State, you got Portland, who's one of those 3 losses is to Indiana, Atlanta, and New York. And then you have Washington again after that. So I guess if you look at the next 5, 4 of the next 5, I think, are teams that we all look at and say, okay, they can be pretty good. Washington may be kind of ascending, but New York, Atlanta, Golden State, those are all teams that we expected to be in the mix. So how much do you think that'll be a barometer for grading where the Fever have grown or maybe not grown, depending on how these games have gone?
Yeah, their Golden State win is their best win, and they're about to play them again. But it'd be very easy if you're a big Valkyries fan to go, well, they played New York the night before, and they traveled in and landed super late. It was a back-to-back, and it was a close game in the second half. Like, you never know what the effect of fatigue was on that game. Great. Play them again. Fever will be very fresh, but not a back-to-back. Like, I say that all to say, to be clear, the Fever played very well in that game. Any of these of those three of the next four could be their best win of the season. Probably would be if they got it. And I think that their stars are all trending in the right direction to say that I think they're going to win some of these games, if not multiple of them, because they all look pretty good at the same time right now. Like if Caitlin and Aaliyah keep looking like this, they're gonna win some of these games. And then it's gonna be like, okay, what can the Fever truly be?
Yeah.
Because if they're beating these teams and their stars look good, like that was the hope for last year, and they were okay to start the year, but Caitlin was missing time with her first groin injury. And as you know, and this is actually probably relevant to talking about the team right now, something about Kelsey Mitchell, she just starts every season just a little slow.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's been a thing for her like every single season. So if they can get off and running on this stretch, like I think people, including me, will feel like, oh man, like this could be a special year for them. And this is their biggest tests so far, especially with their first 2-game road trip coming up. And, like they don't, outside of Connecticut, like basically every game they play until the end of July is against someone, or the end of June, excuse me, is like against a pretty real team that at least can beat you. So we're going to learn a lot about them in the next couple weeks. I think they'd like to show more teeth defensively, which can be pretty hard against a lot of these teams. But if their stars continue to look good and they win 3 of their next 4, I think people are going to start to go, okay, this is legitimately a top name your number between 1 and 4 team in the league. And it's been a really weird start. Like no one looks awesome so far. Like absolutely, maybe you could say Atlanta does, but to me, nobody looks awesome so far this year.
Well, I'm only here to ask about the injury report and ask about, why we can't talk to the medical staff and stuff like that. But no, I agree. And I do think there are good hoops on the way. And I promise you, that's what I want to cover. That's what Tony wants to cover. Every now and then we got to get a little adjacent to that, depending on what the news requires or what our jobs require. But overall, I've enjoyed covering the Fever this season, 5th year for me. I know, Tony, you've been at it much longer than I have, but there are a lot of stakes, and I love covering teams with stakes. I think that adds to the drama and what we're able to do. So real quick, Tony, you got anything you want to plug here on the James Boyd Show besides being like my best friend in media?
Yes, that is my actual full-time job, is being James' best friend in media. Yeah, I'll have a story about Lexi Hall probably up tomorrow, and then what you mentioned, that Raven feature next week. Gamers along the way. Let's go. Game times.
Good. Well, make sure you subscribe to Circle City Spin. That's a great investment when it comes to Pacers and Fever coverage. And of course, you can check my workout.
This was a Fever show, but I have a bunch of Pacer stories coming out there also.
Hey,
soon.
We love it all here on the James Boyd Podcast. So
I forgot this is a show called the James Boyd Podcast.
I know, and every time I say it, I cringe. I'm like, it wasn't my idea. My editor said, hey, make it your name, easy to search, easy to remember. So for those who have been rocking with the show for over a year now, I appreciate that. Tony being a supporter as well. So we'll check in with you all very soon. I would expect to have a chance to reconvene with Tony here in a week or maybe 2 weeks or whatever, whenever the time calls. But I definitely wanted to at least stop by and say, hey, doing more Fever coverage. Want to be able to give my voice to that as well. And I hope you all, if you're Coast listeners and you're here because of that, check out the Fever, man. It's good basketball, good competition, and there's never a shortage on drama if you're into that as well. So I'm James Boyd. Appreciate you listening. Check out the James Boyd Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll check in with you all very, very soon.